My name is Juliet, and this is the story of how 40 years of marriage crumbled not with a bang, but with a silent, sickly sweet scent. A scent that didn't belong in my life. I was a wife, a baker, a mother, a woman who had built a successful chain of bakeries with my own hands. My life was flour, vanilla, and the constant ticking of the antique clock, a wedding gift from my late mother. That clock, ticking relentlessly in the kitchen, was now an accusatory rhythm, a painful reminder of a lie. My husband, Julian, had just returned from one of his business dinners. He looked haunted, his face mapped with lines of fatigue and guilt. He tossed his jacket onto the sofa with a weary performance, loosening his tie as if escaping a noose. He collapsed into bed without showering. That's when the alien fragrance struck me. His expensive cologne was mixed with a new, sweet floral perfume. It felt like a brazen, vulgar confession right in the quiet sanctuary of our home. I moved with the practiced grace of a wife of 40 years, beginning to tidy up the mess. His phone screen glowed on the side table. Julian never used email. He always called. But now, a new email shone like a sinister omen. Out of a morbid curiosity that felt both wrong and necessary, I opened it. The message was short, a handful of words that detonated my world. "You were incredible tonight, Dad." Followed by a single red heart. I froze. Dad. The word echoed. Who was calling him that, and with such intimate, affectionate tone? I looked at Julian in the bedroom. He was snoring peacefully, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. My heart hammered like a thief's drum. I quickly put the phone back, my hands trembling violently. My movements became mechanical, robotic. As I gathered his dirty clothes for the laundry, I felt a crisp, new folded piece of paper in his pant pocket. It was a receipt from a fancy steakhouse in San Antonio, dated that very night. San Antonio? He had told me he was meeting partners in Dallas. Julian hated driving to Dallas. San Antonio, on the other hand, was where his mother had lived. The receipt showed a party of two. A bottle of expensive Cabernet Sauvignon, the wine he bought me for our 10th anniversary. A wine I had never forgotten. Entrees of filet and pasta. I remembered the last time Julian took me to a place like that, 10 years ago when I opened my first bakery. That memory now felt like a faded, beautiful lie in a scrapbook of deceit. With silent, determined resolve, I photographed the receipt and the email. A woman's intuition, a wife of 40 years' intuition, is a deep, primal knowing. Something was going on, and I had to find out the truth. A deep existential dread washed over me. I felt I was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to witness the spectacular collapse of my entire life. I walked to the garage. Julian's old SUV was still warm. The air was thick with the smell of gasoline and that sickly sweet perfume. As I reached into the passenger side glove box, my fingers brushed against something plastic and slippery. My heart stopped. I pulled it out. A tube of used personal lubricant. A sticky, damning piece of evidence. Julian and I hadn't been intimate in years. He always said he was too tired. That age had sapped his desire. What was this lubricant for? The question was a hammer blow to my fragile reality. A survival instinct kicked in. I put it back exactly where I found it. I scrubbed my hands raw with a napkin, as if afraid the betrayal would leave a permanent mark. Under the back seat, I found crumpled napkins soaked in the sweet floral perfume. The scent was alien, defiant, a loud, vulgar shout of infidelity. I took photos of everything. I closed the car and went back inside, the weight of the evidence crushing me. I sat at the kitchen table, trembling. I checked his messages. Only work chats. His inbox was empty except for that one strange email. Everything was too clean, too perfect. A master of lies. My rage was now a cold, hard stone in my chest. A new, dangerous desire began to stir. A need to expose the lie, no matter the cost. The next morning, I was a ghost in my own house. The venomous carousel of doubt, The lubricant, the receipt, the email kept swirling in my head. My hands were busy making Julian's breakfast, but my mind was a frantic whirlwind. Julian came down, looking tired. "I have an important meeting today," he said, a rehearsed line. "I'm sure I'll be home late." He didn't look me in the eye. "Where is the meeting?" "With whom? In San Antonio again?" I held back the scream, the rage a silent fire, and simply replied, "All right, be careful." He gave me a light pat on the shoulder, more like an afterthought than a sign of affection, and left. I cleared the table. I couldn't just sit there inventing theories. I needed the truth. I picked up my phone and dialed the number for Mrs. Miller, a friend who once told me about a discreet and reliable private investigator. "Juliet, if you ever need it, I can give you Thomas's number," she had said. I never thought I would need him. "Hello, Mrs. Miller, can you help me get in touch with Thomas? I need him." A long pause spoke volumes. "Juliet, what's going on? Did Julian do something?" "I just need to know the truth. Can you help me, Mrs. Miller?" She agreed immediately. An hour later, I received a message from Thomas, asking me to meet him at noon at a small cafe downtown. "Mrs. Roberts, please don't worry. I will help you." It was a short message, a lifeline in a sea of deceit. At the cafe, I chose a secluded corner. Thomas arrived, a middle-aged man, short and stocky, with philosophical eyes that seemed to read everything. I handed him a flash drive with the photos. "This is all I have," I said, my voice shaky. "I'm not sure, but I think my husband is cheating on me." The words tasted like ash. Thomas nodded, reviewing each image. "Mrs. Roberts, I understand. I'll start following Mr. Roberts this afternoon. Don't worry, I'll let you know as soon as possible." He was a professional facade. "Thank you," I whispered softly. "I just want to know the truth, whatever it may be." "I'll do my best. Go home and don't do anything to arouse suspicion." I left the cafe, feeling a loneliness I had never experienced. 40 years of marriage, a lifetime built on trust, now crumbling. I felt like a character in a bad movie. That night, as I sat in the bakery, my phone vibrated. A message from Mr. Thomas. I opened it, my heart pounding. It was a photo of Julian, entering a fancy restaurant, holding hands with a woman. I zoomed in. My heart stopped again. It was Allison, my daughter-in-law. She was wearing a tight black dress with heavy red lipstick. They looked like a couple on a date, a shared secret between them. Allison? How was this possible? At family gatherings, she and Julian always acted distant, barely speaking. I now saw it was a masterful act, a performance for my benefit. Mr. Thomas sent more photos. In one, Allison was leaning toward him, smiling, and Julian was toasting her glass with an oddly tender gaze. I felt a crushing pain. In 40 years, I had never seen him look at me like that. Now that adoration was hers. At 2:00 a.m., a video arrived. I put on my headphones. In the video, Allison leaned close to Julian's ear, whispering something that made him laugh loudly. A sound that was a stranger to me. Then they got up and left. Julian, ever the gentleman, opened the car door for her as if she were his lover. I replayed the video again and again. A self-inflicted torture. Allison, whom I had treated like my own daughter, taught how to make our family's traditional flan. And Julian, the man I had given my whole life to. What were they doing behind Daniel's back? I saved all the photos and the video to a flash drive, noting every detail. The evidence was undeniable. I stayed among the trays of sweet pastries, feeling my world fall apart. The memory of Julian helping me carry sacks of flour now seemed like a beautiful lie I had lived for too long. The next morning, the smell of flour and vanilla, which usually comforted me, felt empty and hollow. As soon as I finished signing a delivery invoice, my phone vibrated. It was the detective. "Mrs. Roberts, I'm sending you more evidence." A new series of photos appeared. Julian and Allison were leaving a law office near the main plaza. Allison wore a beige office dress and huge dark sunglasses, a pathetic attempt at anonymity. They walked very close, not like in-laws, but like a couple. The next photo showed them in front of a 4-star hotel. I zoomed in, looking for any sign to deny what I was seeing. They looked too natural, too comfortable. Then came a short video. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. The shot was from a distance, but it was clear enough to see Julian and Allison on the 3rd-floor balcony. His arm was around her waist, and she rested her head on his shoulder. Like a knife stab, I saw them share a quick kiss. The last spark of hope burned away. I replayed the video frame by frame. The room curtain opened slightly, and Allison ran out, hugging Julian. Her face lit up with happiness. I slumped in the chair, clutching the table edge to keep from falling apart. Mr. Thomas wrote, "They also rented the room for the afternoon. It looks like they're staying the night. I'll keep an eye on them." I remembered Julian's text. "Juliet, I won't be home tonight. I have to meet a potential partner from out of town. Get some rest." The caring tone was a lie. A potential partner from out of town? He was here with our own daughter-in-law. I carefully saved every photo and video. Julian's tender gaze toward Allison reminded me of the way he used to look at me. Now all I saw was lies and blatant betrayal. I recalled family gatherings. Allison always sat far away from Julian. Daniel would joke, "Mom, I think Allison can't stand Dad. She avoids him like the plague." I believed it. But now I understood it had all been a farce, a carefully choreographed dance of deception. I felt like a fool, a blind wife betrayed by 2 traitors. I went home. The house felt foreign. I took out a thick envelope from the dresser drawer. I printed all the evidence. Photos of them leaving the lawyer's office. Photos of them on the balcony. I hid the envelope under old family photos. Looking at a photo of the 4 of us, all I wanted was to rip it to pieces. The next morning, I heard the front door open. Julian staggered in, smelling of alcohol. "The partner was too difficult, Juliet," he complained. "I had to drink a lot. I'm dead tired." I watched him perform, feeling the salt rubbed in my wound. "Rest," I replied calmly. "You have to go to work tomorrow." He patted my shoulder, then snored peacefully. He'd never gone to a hotel with our own daughter-in-law. My phone vibrated. "Mr. Thomas." "Mrs. Roberts, I recorded their conversation in the hotel parking lot. I used special equipment. They didn't even notice. I'm sending it to you now." My heart pounded. I put on my headphones and pressed play. The first thing I heard was Allison's voice, cold and ambitious. "Dad, hurry up with that fake contract. I want to have that whole chain of stores already. I want that old hag out of the house." I felt a blow to my chest. Then Julian's voice. "Don't worry about those papers. Juliet doesn't know anything. Leave it in my hands. She trusts me too much." They weren't just cheating. They were planning to take everything I had built. The bakery chain, all the sweat, tears, and sleepless nights. Julian never once got his hands dirty in the kitchen. Now he and Allison wanted to take it all away. I copied the audio to the flash drive. My heart was a wreck, but my composure was cold and hard. The next morning, Thomas sent another batch of new photos. Julian and Allison were inside his car, with a thick pile of papers in front of them. Allison had a red pen, marking the document intently. Julian nodded and smiled in full agreement. Thomas wrote, "I overheard something. It seems they want to use a contact at the notary's office to make the transfer. I'll investigate further." These weren't normal work papers. They were planning to steal everything I had worked for. I sat there among the sweet pastries, feeling my whole world collapse. I reopened the audio file. "That wretched old woman," Allison called me. I remembered teaching her how to make rice. I had hugged her like a daughter. And Julian, the man I had loved since I was a girl in San Diego, had made a joke of me. A regular customer, Mrs. Peterson, came in. "Juliet, your bakery has been packed lately. Your chain of stores is expanding. I'm so proud of you. I forced a smile. What would she think if she knew the truth? I was a wreck inside. A silent rage burned inside me. That night at dinner, Julian sat across from me. Juliet, I have to sign some important business papers this week. Maybe you should look them over. They're complicated. He wanted to drag me into his dirty plan. I heard Allison's voice from the recording. Dad, hurry up and sign the fake contracts. I gave him a dry smile. Yes, I'll look at them later. I'm tired now. He nodded, looking at me as if nothing were wrong. But I knew he was a predator waiting for the right moment. He had a few more glasses of wine, slurring his words. When he went to the bedroom, he left his car keys on the nightstand. My chance. I entered the bedroom slowly. Every step felt like walking between pain and resolve. I grabbed the keys, squeezed them tight, and went straight to the garage. The night was quiet. I opened Julian's car door. The smell of gasoline was mixed with that sweet perfume. I found the tube of lubricant, a monument to their infidelity. It was clear they had used it again. I took the lubricant tube to the kitchen. I scrubbed my hands raw with lemon soap. I took out a tube of clear industrial superglue, a weapon of my revenge. I carefully unscrewed the cap of the lubricant and filled the tube with the glue until it was full. I wiped the nozzle and tested it. It came out smoothly, just like the original lubricant. No one would notice the difference. I smiled faintly. This wasn't a game. It was the first step to getting justice. I put the tube back in the glove compartment, adjusting the seat and mat. In the trunk, I found an unused condom. I took pictures. Each image was a piece of evidence. Back in the house, I put the keys back. I sat on the living room sofa, pretending to read. I couldn't read a word. I thought of Daniel, my son. How could I tell him his wife and his own father were betraying us? Julian woke up. Still not sleeping, Juliet? I smiled. No, I'm just reading a bit. He went back to bed. I looked at him, a stranger planning to destroy what I loved most. But he didn't know I had already started my counterattack. At dawn, I got up. The sunlight was timidly entering the bakery window. I was in my kitchen, kneading dough, channeling my rage into every movement. When I returned home for breakfast, I kept a calm face. Julian, I said, I have to travel to Nashville tomorrow to sign a contract with a new partner. I'm sure I'll be home late. Can you take care of dinner? I watched him. His eyes shone with relief. A big contract? Don't worry, go ahead, I'll handle it. That spark of relief pierced my chest. He wanted me to leave. Thanks. I'll call you if I get back late. As he left, he forgot his phone on the table. A missed call appeared. At Allison Thomas. Before I could touch it, Julian came back, grabbed it, and mumbled, I forgot it. He was gone. He wasn't even bothering to hide it anymore. That day, I worked like a machine. My mind was only focused on Julian and Allison. I needed more evidence to hear from their own mouths. That night, I pretended to be tired. I have to wake up early tomorrow to catch the bus, so I'm going to sleep. Julian gave me a pat. Rest, Juliet. Be careful on your trip tomorrow. I lay down and closed my eyes, but I sharpened my hearing. Close to midnight, when Julian's snoring stopped, I heard him leave the bed quietly. He left the room thinking I was asleep. I followed him on tiptoe. I hid behind the living room curtain and saw him standing in a dark corner. He spoke softly into his phone. Yes, of course, come over to the house tomorrow. We won't have to go to a hotel anymore. Juliet has to leave town and she'll be back late. I heard Allison's soft giggle. That's great, Dad. Finally we can relax. Julian laughed. Yeah, come early. I'll be waiting. I stood there, feeling my blood boil. They were planning to turn my house, my son's home, into their meeting place. I returned to the bedroom in silence. I took out Daniel's old recorder. I checked the battery, put in a new one, and turned on continuous recording. I hid it behind the bookshelf. I covered it with a family photo frame, the photo of the four of us at Daniel and Allison's wedding. I adjusted the cable and then lay down, pretending to be asleep. Julian returned, snored immediately, but my eyes were wide open. I was ready for the next step. I woke up at 5 hours in the morning. I was in the kitchen, staring at the skillet of oil on the stove. The last step of my plan? A simple smoke trap. I tied a thin string to the stove's igniter. I ran it over to the window and attached it to a heavy coffee can. All I had to do was pull it from a distance. The flame would ignite the oil, creating thick black smoke. I opened the window. I tested it once. The smoke rose quickly. I turned it off immediately. I put on my jacket, grabbed my purse, and pretended to leave for my trip. I went into the bedroom and gently shook Julian. I have to go to the bus station right now. I'm going to sign a contract. I'll probably be back late tonight. He opened his eyes and replied in a sleepy voice. All right, be careful, Juliet. Call me if you need anything. He buried his face in his pillow and went back to sleep. I turned away, my heart heavy. Instead of going to the station, I went across the street to Mrs. Peterson's house. She looked at me worriedly. Juliet, what are you doing up so early? Is something wrong? Mrs. Peterson, can I stay here for a few hours? I need to watch my house. She poured me a hot cup of coffee and gave me a chair by the window. Around 10 a taxi pulled up. Allison got out wearing a light floral dress. Julian opened the door, looked around in a hurry, and quickly ushered her inside. It's time, I murmured. I turned on the app on my phone connected to the hidden recorder. The sounds started coming through my headphones. Allison's laughter, the clinking of glasses, heavy footsteps. Then Julian's deep voice. All right, we don't have to hide in a hotel anymore. Allison laughed. You really know how to pick your moments. The old hag is gone, right? I bit my lips, holding back the rage as I listened to her call me the old hag, with so much contempt. Then the bed started to creak, along with other sounds I didn't want to keep listening to. I closed my eyes. Just a little longer, Juliet. Just a little longer. A few minutes later, Allison screamed, What the hell is this? We're stuck. Her voice was filled with panic. Julian growled, Shut up, wait, let me see. I smiled. I barely touched my phone and activated the smoke trap remotely. The string pulled hard. The stove ignited. The skillet of oil caught fire. Black smoke billowed out of the kitchen window in thick spirals. Mrs. Peterson gasped. Juliet, your house is on fire! I pretended to be scared, but inside I felt strangely calm. Neighbors started coming out. Juliet's house is on fire. Call the firefighters. Mr. Miller quickly called the city fire department. I stayed there, holding my coffee cup. Everything was going according to plan. In my headphones, Allison's voice sounded desperate. Julian, do something. I can't move. Julian roared. Don't scream. I'm trying. I knew they couldn't do anything. The industrial superglue was already at work. I imagined them struggling, scared. They wanted to take my bakery, my family, my honor. Now I would make them pay. The smoke continued to rise. Just 10 minutes later, the siren of a fire truck sounded. The red vehicle skidded to a stop. I saw Daniel jump out of the driver's seat in his fire chief uniform. His face was tense. Get the equipment ready quick. There might be people inside. I felt a sharp pain for my son. He was about to face the cruelest truth. I stayed still. Daniel led the way with a sledgehammer, breaking down the front door. I listened to the commotion from the bedroom. Julian's desperate shouts mixed with Allison's sobs. Get everyone out of here. Close the door, Daniel. It was too late. Daniel entered the bedroom. I could imagine what he found. His own father and his wife naked, stuck to each other on the bed. I heard Daniel's voice falter. What is this? A firefighter behind him murmured in surprise. Oh my God! Silence! Daniel shouted immediately. I knew that cry was his last attempt to hide his pain. The humiliation was now public. A firefighter ran out. Chief, the smoke is under control. It was just a small oil fire, nothing serious. The neighbors crowded together. It's Julian and his daughter-in-law, a woman shouted. Oh my God, how could this have happened? Mrs. Peterson, standing next to me, took out her phone and silently started recording. She looked at me with pity and anger. "Juliet, you knew about this, didn't you?" I just nodded softly. The firefighters had to act. They wrapped sheets around Julian and Allison and carried them out on stretchers. I could hear Allison's broken sobs. Julian mumbled weakly, "Don't let anyone see us." But the whole neighborhood had already seen. They were carried out, wrapped in a thin sheet, amidst the growing murmurs. What a disgrace. Father-in-law and daughter-in-law, my God, how filthy. The crowd was still gathered when the ambulance left with its siren blaring. Among the voices, I heard bursts of laughter. What a show! I can't believe there are two people so shameless in this world. I stood among the people pretending to be surprised, as if I had just run there from the bus station. Daniel stood motionless in the yard, his face pale as a ghost. His teammates quietly gathered their tools. I knew Daniel was shocked not just by the sight, but by the double betrayal of the two people he loved most. I walked behind Mrs. Peterson, who silently accompanied me to the hospital. We sat in the third-floor hallway, while I maintained the concerned look of a wife who had just found out her house had been on fire. Hours later, a doctor came out. "Mrs. Roberts, we managed to separate them. Fortunately, there was no serious damage. They just need some skin ointment." I nodded, pretending to be relieved, while my fingers discreetly brushed against my purse where I had hidden 2 tubes of thick mustard. "Thank you, doctor," I said, my voice trembling to hide my plans. "Can I see them?" He nodded and led me to the nurse's station. The nurse, a young woman, looked at me with compassion. "Ma'am, this is a very difficult situation. I'm so sorry." I gave a weak smile. The moment she turned around, I swapped the tubes for the mustard. My hands moved quickly and confidently. I had rehearsed it hundreds of times in my head. I entered the hospital room with a tube of mustard in my hand. "Julian, Allison, are you okay?" Allison was in bed, unable to look at me. Julian, still pale, mumbled, "Juliet, I can explain." I didn't let him continue. I placed the tube of mustard on the table and left. Minutes later, a gut-wrenching scream came from the room. Allison was crying. "It burns! My skin is on fire!" Julian was writhing in bed, cursing, "What the hell is this? Who did this?" The entire hallway was in an uproar. Patients and family members came out to look. "It's them, the couple from the video this morning on the internet." "They deserve it," another added. The humiliation of Julian and Allison was already public. Impossible to stop. Mrs. Peterson's video had spread throughout the neighborhood and on social media. When the crowd dispersed, Daniel entered the room. I had called him, asking him to get the envelope with the evidence and the 2 divorce papers I had ready. He handed me the folder, his gaze empty. I opened it, took out the documents, and placed them on the table in front of Julian and Allison. I looked at Julian directly in the eyes. My voice was cold and firm. 40 years of marriage end here. Sign these and then do whatever you want, as long as you disappear from my son's life and mine." Allison collapsed, crying. "Honey, forgive me. I made a mistake. Please, I beg you, forgive me." But Daniel just looked at her, his gaze as hard as stone, and left without saying a word. Julian tried to grab my hand. "Juliet, listen to me. I didn't want this." I pulled away, cutting him off. "Don't say anything else, Julian. You chose this path." I turned and walked away without looking back. In the hallway, I saw Daniel leaning against the wall, his head in his hands. I walked over and put my hand on his shoulder. "Mom," he whispered, his voice broken. "Why did it have to be Dad? Why her?" I didn't answer. I just hugged him tightly, sharing his pain with my own. In that moment, I knew that Julian and Allison had lost everything. But Daniel and I had also lost a family. A few weeks after the scandal, my bakery was busier than ever. The little bell on the door wouldn't stop ringing. Customers came in and out with smiles. "Juliet, you are so strong," Mrs. Peterson said, holding a bag of freshly baked flan. "The whole neighborhood is proud of you for how you defended your family business amidst all that filth." I smiled and thanked her. People supported me. They called me a strong woman. But only I knew that strength came from the broken pieces of my heart. Every time I looked at the oven where I had worked for 40 years, I remembered Julian and Allison, who wanted to take everything from me but failed. And I'm still here, with my bakery, with Daniel, and with a new life. Daniel moved in with me right after that day. He didn't talk much about what had happened, but I noticed the change. He wasn't the cheerful, always laughing Daniel he used to be. His eyes looked deep, as if they carried a wound that wouldn't heal. "Mom, I want to stay here for a while," he told me the first night. "I'm going to help you run the bakery, talk to clients, whatever you need." I hugged him. I felt the warmth of the son I had raised, and just nodded. I knew Daniel needed time, and so did I. Every morning we opened the bakery together. I prepared the oven, and Daniel reviewed invoices. "Mom, the Grand Hotel wants to increase their sweet pastry order for next week," he called out to me. "All right," I replied. "Confirm the order. I'll prepare more dough." These simple moments gave me a peace I hadn't felt in years. There were no more fake looks from Julian. No more sweet and calculating voice from Allison. It was just Daniel and me. Dinners were just the two of us now. We sat face to face in the small kitchen. "Mom, can you make me some flan this weekend?" he asked me one night with a faint smile. The first I had seen since the scandal. "All right," I replied, relieved. "But you have to help me stir the caramel." He nodded. And in that moment, I felt that we were slowly but surely recovering. I started making time for myself, something I almost never did in 40 years. I joined a cooking club. "Juliet, you make the best flan in the neighborhood," a woman told me. "It's a little trick I learned back in San Diego." I also started going to church on weekends. I would pray, not for Julian or Allison, but for Daniel, for myself, so that we would find the strength to move forward. Sometimes I would go for walks with Mrs. Peterson. "You know, Juliet," she would say, "everyone is still talking about Julian and Allison, but they say you're the one who won." I just smiled without answering. I won, maybe. But the price was losing my whole family. Daniel also started to change. He became less quiet and began telling me about his work as a firefighter. "We put out a fire at the market yesterday," he told me. "It was really dangerous, Mom. But luckily, no one got hurt." I listened, my heart filled with pride. "Please be careful," I said. "You're all I have left." Daniel looked at me with tenderness. "Don't worry, Mom, I'll never leave you alone." Those words were like medicine. They gave me back the faith that even though I had lost so much, I still had my son. One afternoon, while the bakery was full of customers, I looked at the trays of flan and pastries. I thought about the entire journey. I had built this bakery with my own hands. Julian and Allison wanted to take everything from me, but failed. I kept my bakery. I kept Daniel. And most importantly, I kept myself. The hospital room incident and the spread of Mrs. Peterson's video marked the formal public end of my marriage and the collapse of what used to be Julian's reputation. Daniel and I were left to pick up the pieces, and the silence in the house, once an unwelcome guest, now felt heavy and final. Julian signed the divorce papers 2 days later, his hands still somewhat tender from the mustard, his face gaunt and expressionless. He didn't fight for the bakeries, he didn't fight for the house. He simply wanted the humiliation to end. The affair with Allison dissolved almost immediately after they were separated by the fire department. Betrayal built on greed is fragile. When the fortune was no longer guaranteed and the shame was public, their twisted relationship had nowhere to go. Allison disappeared from Daniel's life and mine, retreating into a shadow, her ambitious voice on that recorder now just a mocking echo in my mind. But the silence wasn't peace. It was the vast, echoing space where a family used to be. Daniel was the most profoundly wounded. He moved back home with me, but his cheerfulness was gone. He was efficient, helping me with the orders, the invoices, the logistics of the growing bakery chain. He was my rock in business, but emotionally, he was miles away. One evening, as we sat at the kitchen table, the yellow light of the lamp giving his face a weary glow, the silence was unbearable. The space where Julian used to sit felt enormous, a vacuum in our lives. "Mom," Daniel started, his voice barely a whisper. "The guys at the firehouse. They were asking about him." I knew what he meant. They weren't asking with curiosity. They were asking with pity and disgust. "What did you tell them?" I asked, stirring my coffee. He put down his fork. "I told them he moved away, that he was looking for a new job." He laughed, a dry, bitter sound that held no humor. "A new job." I couldn't tell them the truth, Mom. I couldn't tell them that the man who raised me and the woman I chose were plotting to take everything from us. His face twisted, not with rage, but with confusion and deep, agonizing shame. I realized that my revenge, while necessary for justice and financial independence, had cost my son his innocence and his belief in unconditional love. I reached across the table and took his hand, squeezing it tightly. "Daniel, you have nothing to be ashamed of. Their actions are their shame, not ours. You are a good man, a brave man, and a wonderful firefighter. They broke the foundation, not you." He looked at me, and I saw a flicker of the old Daniel in his eyes, but it was quickly extinguished. "I need time, Mom. I don't know how to forgive." "You don't have to forgive them, Daniel. Not today, not tomorrow. You just have to live for yourself. Focus on your work, on the bakery. Focus on what's real." The bakery became our sanctuary. The rhythmic kneading of the dough, the reliable heat of the oven, the familiar scent of vanilla and yeast. These were constant, honest comforts. We worked side by side, building our business stronger than ever. The neighborhood supported us fiercely, turning the bakery into a symbol of resilience. People weren't just buying flan. They were buying a piece of our redemption story. But still, every night, the kitchen table held a painful emptiness. The revenge had been sweet, but the cost was profound. The quiet dignity with which Daniel handled the aftermath earned him the unspoken respect of the community and his colleagues. But at home, the facade sometimes cracked. One afternoon, Daniel came back from a long shift. He looked utterly defeated. He sat down heavily on the sofa, still in his uniform, his head in his hands. "There was a fire, Mom," he mumbled. "An old couple, they lost everything. Their whole life. Gone in minutes." I sat beside him, putting an arm around his shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Daniel. That's a terrible thing to see." "It is," he agreed, his voice rough. "But the old man, he kept asking for his wife. He only cared about her. He lost the house, the memories, everything. But he still had her." Daniel looked up at me, his eyes red and brimming. "I see them, Mom. I see these old couples who have nothing but each other, and they are stronger than anything. And then I think about us." He paused, the lump in his throat visible. "He threw away 40 years, Mom. 40 years of you building a life for us. For a quick fling and a stack of fake contracts. How do you recover from that?" His question was less about my recovery and more about his own deeply wounded psyche. He was grappling with the fundamental question of why love and loyalty, the two cornerstones of the family he grew up in, had proven to be so utterly worthless to his father and wife. I knew that no amount of baked goods or strong coffee could truly mend this kind of break. "You know, Daniel, your father and Allison chose a path built on lies and greed. They didn't value what they had. But you value truth. You value hard work. You value the people you protect." I guided his head onto my shoulder, a gesture I hadn't done since he was a boy. "You are not your father. You are not your wife. You are Daniel, the firefighter who saves lives and the son who helps his mother rebuild her empire. Don't let their filth contaminate your goodness." He stayed there for a long time, The only sound, the faint ticking of the antique clock. The clock that was still running, still marking time, stubbornly refusing to stop just because a few people had betrayed its sacred purpose. The irony was that my biggest fear, the one Julian and Allison had cynically tried to exploit, was my greatest source of strength. They wanted to seize my financial independence. They wanted to turn me into the wretched old hag, dependent and cast aside. Instead, their betrayal forced me to confront the business I had neglected emotionally while trusting Julian with the paperwork. It forced me to take complete control. I hired a new lawyer, a fierce younger woman who understood that the true fight wasn't about the divorce, but about securing the future of the bakery chain. We streamlined operations, updated contracts, and with Daniel's surprising knack for logistics, made the business even more profitable. My life was no longer ruled by Julian's convenient business dinners. It was ruled by my own balance sheets and my son's calm competence. The emptiness at the kitchen table began to feel less like a loss and more like a hard-won peace. My life, once defined by the predictable rhythm of marriage, was now dictated by the demanding yet honest cycle of the oven. And the oven taught me things that Julian never could. Lesson 1. The power of heat. You can only bake the best bread by subjecting the dough to intense, relentless heat. Similarly, the fire of betrayal and public shame had burned away the illusions in my life. It stripped me down to the core. A baker, a mother, a resilient woman. The pain was the heat, and my independence was the finished loaf. Lesson 2. The importance of ingredients. A good flan needs simple, honest ingredients. Eggs, milk, sugar. No shortcuts, no artificial flavors. My new life demanded the same honesty. Daniel and the bakery were my honest ingredients. The fake love and the stolen contracts were the toxic additives I had finally discarded. I started joining more community activities. The cooking club became my emotional support group. The women, all of my age, shared their own stories of quiet struggles, of marriages that had faded, or of children who had moved away. They didn't talk about Julian and Allison unless I brought it up. Instead, they validated my grief by sharing theirs. "It's the hardest thing," said Clara, a woman whose husband had passed a year ago, "to realize you have to start a new life when you thought you were done starting." I nodded. I feel like I'm 20 again, learning to walk. But this time I know where the trip hazards are. This new network gave me back my identity, which had been so intertwined with Julian's for 4 decades. I was Juliet, the baker with the famous flan, the woman who stood up to a cheating husband and his conniving daughter-in-law. My reputation, once threatened by their filth, had become a mantle of honor. Daniel, meanwhile, found his footing, though in an unexpected way. He started seeing a counselor, something I secretly encouraged. He needed to process the trauma of seeing his hero and his chosen partner collapse into such despicable roles. He learned that forgiveness wasn't necessary for his survival, but acceptance was. Acceptance that they were flawed, broken, and cruel people, and that their cruelty was a reflection of them, not of him or me. One evening, Daniel brought me a meticulously organized spreadsheet. "Mom, look at these profit margins. We need to open a second location near the plaza. The demand is there." I looked at the complex numbers, feeling a surge of pride. He wasn't just my son, he was my business partner. He was finding purpose in building the future, not dwelling on the past. "You're right, Daniel," I said, my voice full of warmth. "But this time we do it all ourselves. No partners, no complicated contracts. Just us." He smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile that reached his eyes, the first in a long time. "Just us, Mom, and a lot of flan." The taste of that conversation was sweeter than any pastry I had ever baked. It was the taste of healing, of a family reborn, of a love that was true and built on the solid foundation of shared effort. The second bakery location opened 6 months later. It was a smaller, sunnier space, designed by Daniel, and it became an instant success. I supervised the baking, and Daniel handled the operations and delivery. We were a formidable team. My son had changed. He had traded his confusion for calm resolve. He had mourned the loss of his father and his wife, but he had emerged stronger, more focused on the present. His job as a firefighter remained his calling, but the bakery was his passion project, his anchor. "Mom," he said one day, looking over a batch of fresh croissants, "I saw Dad yesterday." I froze, wiping my hands on my apron. I hadn't seen Julian since the divorce hearing. I didn't ask where he was or what he was doing. I simply waited. "He was working," Daniel continued, choosing his words carefully. "He was working as a clerk at a small hardware store outside of town. He looked older, tired." "Did you talk to him?" "He saw me first. He tried to smile, but it looked painful. He just said, 'Hello, Daniel. Your mother's flan is still the best, I hear.'" I felt a cold stab of memory, realizing that even in his shame, Julian couldn't escape the truth of my success. The bakery, the flan, the thing he had ridiculed and tried to steal, was his final, undeniable defeat. "What did you say?" I just nodded. I told him the line was getting long and I had to go. I didn't feel rage, Mom. I felt nothing. Just pity. That's all that's left. In that moment, I understood Daniel had truly found his peace. The emotional knot had been cut. His journey of healing was complete not through explosive anger, but through quiet indifference. A few weeks later, I was sorting through old photos, the ones I had almost ripped up when the betrayal was fresh. I found the wedding photo, the four of us smiling, so full of fake promise. I didn't tear it up. Instead, I carefully tucked it away in the back of a drawer. It wasn't a reminder of my pain. It was a testament to how far I had come. It was the before picture of my new life. I realized that my greatest victory wasn't the public humiliation or the secured finances. It was the ability to choose joy over bitterness. It was the strength to rebuild trust with my son and find my own identity outside of a broken marriage. My life wasn't a tragedy. It was a testament to resilience. I was Juliet, the baker from San Diego who had worked with sweat and tears to build an empire. I had endured betrayal, faced public shame, and used industrial superglue as an agent of justice. I had lost a husband and a daughter-in-law, but I had gained my son back, and most importantly, I had gained myself. The little bell on the bakery door rang again, announcing a new customer. The smell of sweet bread filled the air. I looked at Daniel, who was calmly handling the rush. He winked at me. I smiled, a genuine strong smile. The sweet taste of freedom was the best reward.